now into the final hour of the Friday football. Hey, Buffalo Wild Wings, Roseville. It's been a funky good time. About to get better, too. One of my /our very favorites joining us, I believe from the East Coast, or if not there, now she'll be there soon. Her name is Courtney Cronin, at Courtney R. Cronin via the tweet machine. Please follow her as 9 to noon does. And she covers the Chicago Bears for ESPN's NFL Nation, also on Around the Horn on TV, ESPN Radio, stuff like that. And beloved C joins us now. Courtney, PA, and Charch, how you been?
I'm great. How are you guys doing? Since
Excellent.
I haven't seen you for 3 weeks.
Right.
Crazy stretch of division games.
I'm going to get into that fur coat here in a second because it may be needed this weekend because Courtney Cronin, as I mentioned earlier, which I think is super cool, she's going to be the sideline analyst, the sideline reporter for ESPN Radio's coverage of the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Philadelphia Eagles. And so I looked at the weather, 43 and cloudy Sunday. That's not too bad for sideline reporting, right?
No, I mean, it looks like it might rain a little bit, so I'm bringing my rain boots with me because, as we know, and as Vikings, the Vikings know from all those years playing in Philly that stadium and that grass is not well kept. So got to be prepared for the elements. But I couldn't have asked for a better, it's not going to be 20 degrees and snowing. Although that would be kind of cool to be down there since I'm never usually getting that perspective during a game. So I'm grateful for it either way.
Do you happen to know a man named Howard Eskin, who is the sideline guy for the Eagles radio network?
Yeah, for WIP, I do.
There you go.
I mean, he's a legend.
Yeah, right. And so are his fur coats, which means if you wear that fur coat that I saw you in on the sideline for ESPN at Soldier Field against some of his Walt Frazier-esque, might be an old reference, but some people get it, Walt Frazier-esque fur coats that he wears. I mean, it's not a football game. It's a fashion show. This could be unbelievable.
I don't know how to travel with mine. That's honestly, PA, I was thinking I need to bring my warmest coat. That is my warmest coat. How do I get it on the airplane without ruining it? So if anybody has any suggestions, I will gladly take them. But no, I have heard from about Howard Eskin and his wonderful fashion choices on the sideline. So I have to set my game up this week.
Oh, this is great. Beloved C on the sideline for, by the way, Charch, an awesome game with Pittsburgh and Philadelphia.
Yeah, it will be.
That is an awesome game. No way, Courtney, would I trust a legit fur coat that, I don't know, knowing you is probably worth $20,000 to TSA people in your luggage. No chance.
Come on.
You can't do that.
Yeah, I don't know if this thing's going to be making the trip. You guys are talking me out of it right now.
Okay, now lastly on just what I think is unbelievably cool, the fact that you're doing this and career continues to ascend, you continue to take chances. It's just beautiful. Are you going to be on the lookout for A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts to maybe bark at each other a little bit during the course of the game? That story's kind of writing itself for you, isn't it?
I'm going to be standing right behind that bench because you can get as close as you want to on the sideline, and I'm going to be listening in for those conversations. I know that they've passed it off as it's nothing. Well, it's clearly something. Even your teammate who's on injured reserve and is not playing anymore jumped in on it and offered some perspective and then tried to walk it back.
Right.
I think that they're feeling pretty tight right now, and it's not, the offense is not based on A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, and they know that. Like, they're successful because of Saquon Barkley, and the way that they've been skating by in some of these games, I mean, they're a drop pass away from Carolina winning that game last week. So I think that there's some, PTSD probably from the 10-1 start last year, and then they crumble down the stretch, and they lose in the wild card round, and they don't want that to happen again. And there might be some signs internally of things that are regressing, especially on offense, that probably has guys a little frustrated. You should probably target A.J. Brown before the second quarter. I'm not surprised he acted out like that and what he said about passing because you can only block for so long when you're an alpha receiver like that before emotions start to fly and you start to get pretty irritated. But I will say, the way that they've handled it this week, that can either do one of two things. And I saw it with the Bears earlier this year. When something's the only thing you talk about during the week, and you get to Friday and you haven't even asked real football questions yet about the matchup, then that's probably not a good thing. That's what happened with the Bears after the Washington game with the tip Hail Mary, and they go on to lose 6 more after that. The Eagles have a prime opportunity here. They're 11-2. They just locked up a playoff spot, and to beat the Steelers at home, I mean, my God, what that would do for them now going into the final 3 games of the season after that.
Big time.
Yeah, Courtney, I saw a stat roll by Twitter that was effectively this. The Eagles have the lowest passing play percentage based on expectation for that play. And part of it is just Saquon Barkley's really good. Jalen Hurts can run the ball. I don't feel like there has to be a mandate to pass more for a team that's running the ball as effectively as it is.
Yeah, and they're more effective as with what they're asking the run game to do this year. So it's the offensive line, that's everybody up front.
Yeah.
And of course, Saquon Barkley. They're a more effective rushing team this year than they were last year when they were dominant with the tush push and Jalen Hurts in those scenarios at the goal line. He still is, but you don't have a Hall of Fame center executing that. Like, it is really neat to see how that offense went from, where kind of being all over the map last year to truly solidifying its identity with a throwback like the run game with Saquon Barkley. And I think it makes everybody better because you're not putting as much pressure on Jalen Hurts to have to be 2022 RPO version of Jalen Hurts. Like, you can still get that level of play, but he's not going to impress you with his arm the way that some other quarterbacks will around the league. And I think that they had their realization about that a year ago when they went through this final stretch when it was just looking like a complete mishmash offensively. They figured out what they needed. They said goodbye to DeAndre Swift. They went out and got Saquon Barkley, and the running game has been, the best in the NFL. And to see how effective and just like the efficiency numbers with Saquon Barkley compared to what it was, that's the reason that team is, as good. It has as good of a chance at knocking off Detroit, who I still think is the best team in the NFL, as anybody right now.
Courtney Cronin covers the Bears for ESPN and will be on the sideline for Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. For the Steelers side of this, Courtney, this is a tremendous litmus test for the playoff viability of the Steelers. They're in first place in the AFC North, but I don't think a lot of people see them as a real threat to, say, Buffalo as a playoff force. If they can manage a victory here, I think it really legitimizes the Steelers as a team and especially as a defense that you have to take seriously for the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I do too. And I think a lot of that is, we're so dependent when we look at how bad their red zone numbers are. And I think most people look at that and say that's what's going to make a team crumble in the postseason because of all the opportunities they've had and that they've blown. But think about their schedule. It's not easy. They go from the Eagles game to the Ravens, the Chiefs on Christmas Day, and then they end things against Cincinnati on January 5th. That's a murderer's row of teams, and that's a good way to prove your playoff viability in there if you are going to be more than a first-round exit. Now, defensively, can they carry themselves through the playoffs like they did last year through the first round? Potentially. But I still think the way that Arthur Smith deserves a ton of credit for all that he's gotten out of Russell Wilson this year, how the offense has operated. Yeah, they're dealing with some injuries right now. The George Pickens one is a big one, but I do think that, in terms of matchup-wise, they've got to like their chances considering what they've done on defense, especially in the red zone this year.
Courtney's ready for Eagles and Steelers at Courtney R. Cronin, and to the A job, ESPN Nation's reporter covering the Chicago Bears, ESPN.com. Though I'm going to ask the question because Courtney wrote about it at ESPN.com. I read it. I'm going to let her carry you through some of the pertinent points here. How has quarterback Caleb Williams improved the last 4 with Thomas Brown leading the way?
The numbers everywhere, pretty much. Like QBR, yards per attempt, completion percentage, his off-target percentage has gone down. I just think it's a better game plan. It's, they're using motion about 10%, at a 10% higher rate collectively these last 4 games than they were with Shane Waldron. And that opens things up for a quarterback when he can move defenders because you've got a receiver running to the other side of the formation. It helps. You saw it last night on that critical third down that the Rams were able to convert late in the game to keep that drive alive, to walk off with a win. They used motion to clear out an area for Cooper Kupp to have that reception. Thomas Brown comes from that tree. So I think that there's a lot of Sean McVay in what you're seeing right now knowing that it's not Brown's offense, but he's still trying to utilize some of the concepts that he had, really, become, akin with when he was out with the Los Angeles Rams. And that's helped Caleb. That's helped Caleb become more comfortable. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things that he still needs to work on. Like took 5 sacks on third down last week, one of which ended up being a fumble, and then the 49ers I think it's 5 plays later, they went and scored a touchdown off of it. He's been really good at not turning the ball over. No interceptions since I think the last one was in week 6 against Jacksonville, but there's some concerning things still about him holding on to the ball too long. Obviously, we saw what happened against Minnesota in overtime. Like that, after they, orchestrate those 2 drives to get in position to go to overtime, he takes a sack on 2nd and 9, and then the delay of game completely knocks them out of any chance they would have to keep that drive alive. There's a lot of good within a bad season for the Bears. The thing is all lost. They're 4-9. They've got a lot of changes to make in the offseason. If you're Caleb, you're wondering what this team is going to do and if they're going to be able to get it right with the people that are making the decisions right now. So while there's probably not a lot of intrigue around this game specifically for the Bears side of it, there's a lot of intrigue 3.5 weeks from now when they start opening up their coaching search and going after guys and putting formal requests in to see who the next head coach is going to be.
Given how well Thomas Brown has helped really the whole offense and particularly Caleb Williams, doesn't Thomas Brown need to be at least in consideration to if this progression continues with Caleb Williams? Isn't Thomas Brown in consideration for the next head coaching job as well?
Yeah, and I think consideration's the word there because they're going to have to. They can't get this wrong. They got it wrong the last 2 times. They can't go with a safe pick of, somebody that just, was there and Caleb's comfortable with. They've got to make sure that the offense they're installing, the play caller, all of it's right from the jump because they screwed that up having to fire a guy after 9 games. Yeah. I don't want to look at like San Francisco in a vacuum and say like, oh, that killed Thomas Brown's chances of getting a head coaching interview. You still have 4 games after that. Most times coaches who get fired, if it happens later in the year, whoever takes over doesn't actually have a real shot at staying on. The Bears like Thomas Brown a lot. Did it look great in San Francisco? Absolutely not. It was their worst loss in any of the 7 that they've had in this streak. But I don't think that you can just take Thomas Brown's name out of consideration after I had reported, and they fire Matt Eberflus, that people internally were saying, yeah, he's going to be a part of this. We don't want to view this as an audition these next 5 games because you don't want to put that sort of unfair pressure on somebody when this is not his offense. The team's already pretty bad, and it's a pretty big hole to climb out of, but they have to play better than they did last week. You got to win a game somewhere in the stretch, I would imagine, for him to be considered a serious candidate. But he should certainly be within the mix to be able to present himself in the way that he would have done things and do things from the start, other than, this was the best I could do with the 5-game sample size.
It's low hanging fruit here, but is Ben Johnson the favorite to become the next coach for the Chicago Bears, offensive coordinator for the Lions, or is it even too early to lay out like who's favored and why?
The early favorite's going to be Ben Johnson because they'll go offense. Usually, most teams do this. They went from Matt Nagy, an offensive coach, to Matt Eberflus, defensive coach. The smart money's on the Bears getting an offensive coach because everything centers around the quarterback. You have a quarterback who's going into year 2 who you've been able to see make some pretty important strides amid some pretty crappy circumstances. Now, it doesn't mean you would derail that if you hired a Mike Vrabel or an Aaron Glenn or one of the other defensive names that's out there. But you'd have to have a really strong offensive coordinator candidate on your staff and on your short list that would come with you. And I think it's probably just a safer bet for the Bears to go offense, to get somebody who has done this, has been proven. They see him twice a year and expect that that's probably going to be a better fit. However, there's a caveat here. Like, is Ben Johnson able to do in Chicago what he's done in Detroit? If you're looking at it just based on personnel, the answer is no. There has to be a major commitment to the offensive line this year, the way that it was long before Ben Johnson got to Detroit when they drafted, I think it was Taylor Decker in 2016, and then kept moving onwards, like a first-round pick here, a first-round pick there every year just about. that's why he's got one of the best offenses, because he's got one of the best offensive lines. And if he can have a strong enough voice and be given the credence to determine what he needs on his roster, working with Ryan Poles, who has gotten the vote of confidence from Kevin Warren that he's going to remain the general manager, then I think it can work. But to expect he's going to come in here and it's going to be Detroit automatically, that's just not realistic based on what their roster looks like and where the Bears roster looks like.
I'm not hearing a lot of confidence in Ryan Poles from Bears fans. What is his status as general manager? Is that something that is, is there a healthy amount of skepticism among the Bears fans?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there should be, because he hired, and I'm using air quotes, you guys can't see me, he hired Matt Eberflus. He was hired, and then 2 days later they announced Eberflus was the head coach. So I think you guys can put two and two together about how that actually happened. But I will say the two of them have been tied for 2.5 seasons now together. And Ryan Poles had an identical win-loss record as Matt Eberflus until last week when he added on one more loss than Eberflus has. This is his roster. These are his decisions. And, there's been a lot of skepticism just about, how come he gets to stay if Matt Eberflus was fired? And I think Eberflus being fired, as you saw with the 38-13 beatdown that they suffered last week, that was a Band-Aid on a far larger problem. The roster has holes on it, no doubt, and that falls on the general manager because Poles is the one making those decisions. Now, you can tell kind of where allegiances are in the building and where kind of some of that power lies. It wasn't Ryan Poles forgetting to call a timeout or freezing in the moment, not calling a timeout in Detroit. It wasn't him not getting a couple yards closer against Green Bay and then having the kicker's field goal block. It wasn't, he wasn't responsible for the coaching thing. So I think that was an easy decision for them to make, that they could not go on any longer because it was Matt Eberflus, not Ryan Poles, who had lost the locker room. But that doesn't mean he gets off scot-free here. And yes, he did get the vote of confidence from Kevin Warren. That doesn't always mean that that's going to, that's hard and fast and true. That the person who has that sort of, backing from the front office gets to stay. But at least for right now, he's going to be part of the coaching search. I do think that there's a lot of skepticism and questions about who's actually going to be making the decision on who the next head coach is. Will it be Ryan Poles? Will it be Kevin Warren? Will it be George McCaskey? There's a lot of politics at play here that I think that any head coach naturally coming in is going to be skeptical of, considering if you want to come into a place to either start your career or get a second chance at being a head coach, you don't want to have things that look like outliers that could derail that from the very start, and that's going to be a natural question that comes up. Who the hell am I reporting to? Am I reporting to the general manager? Am I reporting to the team president? Am I reporting to the owner? There's a lot at play here that makes this pretty dramatic of a head coaching search.
All right, last one for me, for Courtney Cronin, then Paul, then we'll pause. At Courtney R. Cronin via the X Machine, follower is 9 to noon does, please. What's different with the defense now that Eberflus no longer is crafting the plan? All right, so I know we have Eric Washington, and he's calling it and everything, but Eberflus, he didn't do a terrible job with that defense. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right. But since week 7, that was their bye, and the way I've looked at numbers, everything has regressed since then. There's not one thing this season that's become the glaring outlier. It may appear to be the run defense, but it's kind of everything. Highest total QBR allowed, all since week 7. Highest total QBR allowed, highest yards after the catch per reception allowed, highest yards per completion allowed, yards per attempt. Opposing passers are taking nearly 2.8 seconds in the pocket to pass, which is the longest in the NFL. So those things should tell you no pass rush is effective right now. Second highest first down per pass attempt. It just continues to get worse and worse each week. And certainly, they were outgained by 315 yards in the first half last week. They allowed 319 yards of offense in the first half to San Francisco, a team that was down to running back number 4 and George Kittle, who was getting open on screen. It's kind of baffling how bad it's looked. And, there's some things that might might be at play here. Like if you look at like week 1 through 6, so the first half of the season for them before they had their bye, they were in nickel 87% of the time. That dropped after week 7 till now. They're in nickel 69% of the time. 28% is base, and some of that has to do just with some of the injuries that they've had on the back end of the defense. But like if you parse through the numbers, it feels like this is certainly it's a scheme thing because they have this. They want to get pressure with their front four. That's fine. I think it's antiquated, but that's who they are. I think this is speaking to more of a talent thing with the players that you have out there because, frankly, this is the same defense outside of like 1 or 2 pieces that they had last year when they were number 1 against the run. Injuries have affected that. And I think just, the one game that they had in Washington when Matt Eberflus lost the defense the way that they defended the play before the Hail Mary and then defended it afterwards, I think that's kind of the tipping point for why this defense has just snowballed in such a poor way here in the back end of the season.
Time for one more.
Courtney, the game's not till Monday, so we probably don't know definitively here, but who's going to run the ball for the Packers? We've got a pretty serious groin injury for DeAndre Swift, and Roschon Johnson still hasn't cleared the concussion protocol.
Yeah, it's, with Roschon, it doesn't sound, I don't know, like DeAndre was out there yesterday for the walkthrough, but he would have been DNP had it been a real practice because they're not doing practices anymore on Wednesday. Last week he had I think it was a quad injury, and it didn't limit him. Like he was able to play. They're going slow with some of their vets right now, and giving guys a little bit more time to, work through things during the week, and then maybe go out there on Friday, which will be Saturday in this case, and test it out a bit. I don't know how severe that quad injury is though, but if he isn't able to go, then you're certainly looking at Travis Homer, Darrington Evans, and whoever else they could sign off the practice squad at this point.
Have fun this weekend, and you're going to kill it. Look forward to hearing about it next week, and I'll see you at the stadium Monday, okay?
Sounds great. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Appreciate you. Say, that's Courtney Cronin, at Courtney R. Cronin, via the X Machine, via Twitter, and she covered the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, she attended feasts.
20, she did? Yeah, I was trying, at least one, right?
Yeah, at least one.
Yeah, so she started, I think it was the Miracle season, 2017, and left after 2021. So, so yeah, we got a half decade here. Yeah. And Kevin Seifer replaced her at ESPN.com. Kevin's elite, does wonderful work, just like Courtney. But it takes a certain degree of confidence and or gumption or belief in yourself to take what is good. And the facility's comfortable, the amenities are good. She liked living here. And then, well, now she's from Chicago.
She's from Chicago.
She went back. Yep. She went back to her hometown.
Yeah.
But built, ESPN Chicago, covering the Bears for ESPN.com. On with, I think it's ESPN 1000.
Yeah, it's
Waddle and Sylvie.
Yeah, the inferior of the two Chicago stations for sure, but nevertheless, ESPN station, yes, 1000.
I think the ratings may indicate differently, but now, so Around the Horn and ESPN TV, and now sideline reporting. I remember when very impressed with
when Courtney made
one of my favorites.
I remember saying ESPN believes in me, and they're going to give me some national opportunities.
Oh,
and they've done that.
Okay,
and so that was all. This was all part of the plan. Mm-hmm. It's moving all in the right direction, and Courtney Cronin's she's got a star-laden future ahead of her, I believe. Yeah.
That's Paul Charchi, and I'm Paul Allen. Into the penultimate from Buffalo Wild Wings, Roseville. It's the Friday Football Feast on KFAN.
Join the Power Trip's Zach Halverson at Treasure Island on Friday the 20th for a Daughtry pre-party in the Parlay. Join him starting at 4 p.m. for your chance to win last-minute tickets and upgrades. Get the full details now at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
It is now post time for the Fantasy Football Feast, something we do weekly with Paul Charchi and Guillotine League, guillotineleagues.com. We thank Courtney Cronin for joining us and from a Fantasy Feast standpoint, and here they are. Did you at the end of the equation? So I'm Guy raised. So if we're down to 4,
Are you still alive?
No, I'm dead.
Oh, so was it last week? Was it
2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and of course I left 110 points on the bench. I mean, every Bucky Irving that ever has played and gotten 27 points, they were all on my bench. But that's fine because the juice box Nordo, he got. Who did he get from me? Justin Jefferson.
Oh boy,
and Josh Jacobs. Come up kind of nicely, haven't they?
That worked out okay last week.
And I cut Sam Darnold 2 weeks ago. He picked him up. And to use your guy, Bo Nix, it was just disease. But hoping Nordo gets the prize here. So, did you at the end of the equation, given we're Guy raised, which means there could be severed heads?
Yes.
Rolling on floors across the Great Divide. And we don't want to deal with that. It's a lot of cleaning up to Christmas. Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
Is he, I mean, it obviously depends on who you have. So if you're like, well, I got Justin Jefferson, and Cooper Kupp didn't do anything last night, but I got Jefferson and this guy and this guy. What do you do with Keenan?
Well, we talked all the reasons you could start Keenan earlier in this show, and we talked about the Vikings' struggles against slot guys and how big a role he's had in this Thomas Brown offense. But Paul, with 4 teams left in your guillotine league, we're benching DK Metcalf,
right?
I can't get myself to start somebody like Keenan Allen with, the ups and the downs.
Okay.
And
I got it.
Yeah.
Well, then
we're not quite there for that.
But see, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth with all due respect. How do you implore people to start Rashad Bateman with seasons and heads and money on the line? Are we out of our minds here? What are we doing?
We're not starting Bateman. All right. That's for sure. No, Bateman's out.
Okay.
So we're not doing that.
Well, then why are we thinking about, as you would say, something called Sincere McCormick?
Sincere McCormick.
Who is Sincere McCormick?
I'm going to hit you with some other people with adjectives for names. Okay?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Oh, this is
Tell me
great.
what comes to mind. Peerless Price. You remember him?
Love it. Giants
Peerless
receiver.
Price? Yes.
University of Tennessee.
Good. He was good.
Yeah.
Sterling Sharp.
Sterling Shepard.
And Sterling Shepard.
Beautiful.
But how about Sterling Sharp?
Yeah, fantastic.
Amazing Packer.
Yeah.
It would have been in the Hall of Fame trajectory 100%, but he got the neck injury, and that ended his career.
But we doubled up on adjectives there. Sterling and Sharp.
Shepard. And Sharp.
And, well, Shepard would be a noun.
You're right. Yeah. Well, although you can shepherd a process through, you can
Which would
adjective
make it
that.
a verb.
You can adjective. Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
You're right.
So, no, keep going.
Okay.
This is super fun.
How about...
Hold on. I want to think of some, too. Adjectives for first names in the NFL.
Happy Gilmore.
Brilliant. Will Levis.
Will.
Yeah.
There you
Will,
go.
which is an adjective describing incessant interceptions. Just kidding. Where there's a there's a pick.
That's pretty. I like that as well.
All right. So Sincere McCormick.
What
are we doing here?
He's the starting running back for the Raiders. Mm-hmm. This is what Antonio Brown did last year with Zamir White, where he was not happy with the running they were getting, and Josh Jacobs got hurt, and he's like, I'm going to give Zamir White a long look. And Zamir White actually was fantasy relevant all of December. Now it's Sincere McCormick, and he's looked kind of good. 5.5 yards per carry is a massive improvement over what they were getting from Alexander Madison and from Zamir White. And so he's been now installed as the starter. Madison's healthy and going to come back, but he's going to be a backup in this thing, and they're going to see what they've got. Right now, the Raiders own the number 1 pick in the draft.
Yeah.
Things have gone that badly for them, and they're just...
Gardner. Oh, no, it's a noun.
Gardner Minshew. It's close.
So I'm just thinking, just keep going, okay? Well, you got me all messed up on this thing now.
It's turned into grammar
Gardner.
rock.
No, it's
right
a noun.
Yes,
Damn it. It's like when we did the body part bit.
You remember that from 10 years ago?
Yeah, the linebacker Larry Foote.
Yeah, Lynn Dickey.
Yeah.
Harry Colon.
Basketball player Luther Head. It just keeps going and going.
It really does.
So anyway, Sincere McCormick.
Sincere McCormick. Fantasy startable at a flex level. And, these are the guys... Almost every year, somebody emerges kind of out of nowhere that powers teams through the fantasy playoffs. Sincere McCormick might end up being that guy.
Roman. Oh, it's a city. Okay. All right, 3-2. I forgot to ask beloved C. Roma Dunze.
Yeah.
What? I mean, this is, what was he, top 10, top 13? I mean,
he was pick
Ninth or
nine,
something?
I think,
Yeah.
9 in the draft.
What,
yeah.
so what-
Now, he scored twice last week, and one of them, gorgeous toe tapper in the corner of the end zone.
Yeah.
That was a NFL starter level catch, and it was a thing of beauty. I like that they're giving him more and bigger spots, but the volume just isn't there. They're feeding Keenan Allen, they're feeding DJ Moore. The volume isn't there for Roma Dunze, but you are starting to see it come together on the field with bigger plays and bigger moments for Roma Dunze. So it's been a slow progression. It's been a disappointing season in totality for Roma Dunze, given where he was drafted, the pedigree, but still, we're heading the right direction on him.
Ain't nobody using Roma Dunze
In the playoffs, no chance.
All right, and finally, then this is perplexing. What do you do with Alvin Kamara?
Oh, boy.
Against Washington?
Yep.
I mean, because Kamara at times has carried teams
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? But so many is according to the Tolstoy, so many injuries around him, and here they are.
Including the quarterback. Derek Carr not going to play in this. He's got a broken hand and a concussion, so he's out.
Who do they use?
They've
Spencer
announced
Rattler?
Jake Hayner.
Who?
Yeah.
What happened to Spencer Rattler, the rookie?
They tried him earlier when Derek Carr went down, and it didn't go very well.
What about Taysom Hill?
So, he's on IR.
Oh, he's still on IR.
So he's on IR.
Oh,
so
geez.
think about this. Saints, your quarterback is not available and really is probably going to go on IR. I think they're just going to shut him down for the year. So Derek Carr, then Taysom Hill, who had been your gadget do everything guy.
Yeah.
He's on IR. Chris Olave on IR. Rashid Shaheed on IR. Bub Means, for Pete's sake, on IR.
Marcus Colston on IR.
Right. They have 7 offensive players on injured reserve. Ryan Ramczyk hasn't played all year. It's a wreck. So now you're looking at starting Alvin Kamara on your fantasy team. All Washington has to do to win the game is stop Alvin Kamara.
Wow.
Because Jake Hayner throwing to Marquez Valdez-Scantling is not a recipe for success.
Tell me what you think of this, because you're crafty. Is it because I'm dead now? I won a League last year, but I can't remember how it works. But I'm dead now. Can you play coy and drop Kamara and then hope somebody else picks him up because it's Kamara?
Yes, you can.
I'm using Alvin Kamara, and then all of a sudden
it's a trap. That's right. Yeah, that's called the sabotage drop.
But don't you love the sabotage drop?
I love the sabotage drop, and he is a candidate for that. In Alvin Kamara's 3 games without Derek Carr in the middle of the season, he averaged 39 rushing yards, 31 receiving yards. That's it. So, yes, that is a sneaky sabotage candidate. Love it.
Okay, well, Adam Thielen, a player we discussed earlier, former Viking, I mean, has he become a playoff run hero? I mean, like Adam Thielen, it's all fun and games until you're trying to scoop chips.
Yeah.
And you're like, did I really use a Carolina Panther here when I'm trying to win this whole thing? Or is he a playoff run hero?
I think he's a playoff run hero, Paul. Schedule is favorable for Carolina rest of the way, including this week. Thielen, I think I've got him ranked as like wide receiver 18 this week.
Oh.
That puts him in play for most people, most leagues.
Oh.
It's just this offense goes through Adam Thielen. You want, especially in PPR leagues, you're going to point per reception. They are targeting Thielen all the time. And as we talked earlier in the show, Thielen right now just on fire, catching everything with him. And it's great to see. He is, and with Bryce, and it's largely a conversation about Bryce Young. I love the version of Bryce Young we have seen the last month and a half. And that guy, I feel like I can count on Bryce Young, Dave Canales, and Adam Thielen in the fantasy playoffs.
The final segment from the Friday football feast at Buffalo Wild Wings. Roseville is around the corner. It's PA and Charch feasting on KFAN. And finally, it behooves us, specifically with football and or Minnesota Vikings fans, to bring up Hall of Fame receiver Randy Moss, where he's going to be speaking today via his Instagram account. I believe it's 4 o'clock Central. He posted that on Twitter yesterday, and it's going to take place on Instagram, I believe, at 4 o'clock. But football immortality is battling some, what I think are some rather significant health complications now. So if you're a person of prayer, like I am, I pray to God's will that Randy and his family and friends understand what's happening and latch themselves up with the Lord. And just see where everything goes from there. So best of luck for Randy.
Yep, and Randy gets to be exactly as open about this as he wants to be. What he has told us to this point is he's told men to get yourself checked.
Right.
Which, we don't know exactly what that means, but, that narrows down the field of possibilities quite a bit for Randy Moss. Mm-hmm. And hopefully he can turn this opportunity to address male health. Share what he's going through as a young man who's in very, very good shape.
Right.
If these things can happen to him, slobs like us, we're in danger too. And so we can, maybe this is an opportunity for Randy to help us better identify steps that we can all take to check our own health and remain healthier. And we'll see what he has to say here. Hoping. I fear it's pretty serious because he's walked away from his NFL duties. That's, it must be pretty significant. And, I hope that we get whatever the best possible news is here.
Did you read ProFootballTalk.com, Mike Florio and how he wrote about this?
No, I did not.
I read it last night, and I really like how Mike did this because the first part, and I didn't know this happened, but I guess people had been going on social media with screenshots or like contacting ESPN because I guess Randy's eyes had developed kind of an off-white or yellow.
Oh, really?
Yeah, tint
okay.
or color to them
All
within
right.
the last couple of weeks, and people were like pointing it out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's what drove him or guided him to the hospital to like check, but so I read that in the story. But what I really like what Mike did was he never talked about what is being speculated by some people on social media that potentially could be wrong with Randy Moss. And the way he laid it out is we don't go down that road. We let the individual
for sure
share it on with their veracity on their terms and at their time.
Yeah.
Because it's just been sad the last couple of days seeing people try to, and they may be right. It may be what you read on social media, but people trying to jump out there and be like, breaking news, I've learned Randy Moss has this. Well, I'm like, well, why don't you make the hashtag how many days he has left to live? I mean, seriously, it's ridiculous that people are concerned about things like that.
Well, we're concerned about Randy Moss.
About being first.
Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why do you have to speculate? And why can't it just be on his terms?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I'd like it would be very interesting if it turns out social media did tip him off and that he actually learned something.
Yeah.
We got
about
some
the
positive
eyes.
About, yeah,
right.
And maybe that happens. I'm reminded of. There was a Wild fan who identified an opposing coach that had skin cancer, I think, because she was sitting right next to the opposing box.
I remember that.
And she identified skin cancer on somebody. Maybe it'll turn out to be that way. But regardless, thoughts and prayers for Randy Moss. Hoping for the best that this is not something that's something that could potentially be life shortening for Randy Moss. And we'll learn more later today.
You guys are awesome. Thanks for coming out today. We appreciate you, Buffalo Wild Wings Roseville. Paul Charchian, I'm Paul Allen. Hey, I'm going to be on the radio at 1:30 today with Dan Cole, the Common Man, playing Program Password. So check that out at 1:30 for Jared Wells, Nick Madden's Street Team with Ellie and Grace, and Max Fuller guiding the Great Ship Love Covenant at FM 100.3 KFAN. That's the Friday football. Later.
Podcast today's Paul Allen Show, or listen back to previous show and interviews by going to the iHeartRadio app or KFAN.com.